Boom! We are live for the first time in a little while, but I'm very excited. It is our first of the Meet the Candidates series here on Facebook Live with you, Philadelphia's AM 990 The Answer, Facebook page likers, followers, listeners. I think both of our special guests are here. I'm just going to bring our host onto the screen real quick, make sure that we have a connection. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Eddie. How are you this evening?
Doing very well. How are you?
Is this thing on?
I think it is. You can hear me and I can hear you.
Yeah, everything sounds great.
All right. Awesome.
Thanks for being here.
Yep. So I'm going to take you off the broadcast. I'm going to give our countdown, and then it'll be you and Lou. All right.
Cool. See you in a bit.
All right. All right, everybody. We are good to go. So enjoy the show. And remember, put your questions in the comments there. I'll be able to see them. All right. Let's get it started.
There we go. Good evening. Welcome into this Facebook Live Meet the Candidates, a very, very special edition of Facebook Live. We've done a few of these throughout the course of the last year or so, but none are more important, I would submit to you, than the ones you're going to start watching every Monday night. And we kick it off this evening with a gentleman that Pennsylvanians know well. He was a congressman. He was a mayor before that. He was a candidate for the United States Senate a while back, and now he is making a run for the governor of Pennsylvania. We're pleased to bring to our first Meet the Candidates Facebook Live, Lou Barletta. Lou, welcome to the show, sir. Welcome back.
Hi, Chris. Good to be here. It's my first Facebook Live, so I'm pretty excited.
Is it really? Well, awesome. We've only done a few, so forgive the clumsiness of it. They're fun.
Well, the only thing that can ruin it on my end is my 2 cats and a dog, so they're out of my control.
No, it's an organic vibe. That's the way it's supposed to go. And so as people are watching, please throw your questions in. Fast Eddie's going to throw questions up on the screen, and as you submit questions, if you're watching, submit them. Eddie will throw them up, and Lou and I will talk. So no questions are out of bounds. Ask whatever you will. The whole goal of these is to obviously get to know our Republican candidates better before you go to the polls and zero in on a pick and a nominee. So let's just kind of start with that 30,000-foot view, Lou. What does this election coming up in 2022 mean to you as a Pennsylvanian, and what should we all be thinking about as Pennsylvanians?
Well, I think, I think about my grandkids, my 10 grandkids. It was the reason I got in this race in the first place. I saw how Governor Wolf mismanaged the pandemic, picking and choosing which businesses had to close. And, I was a business owner along with my wife, and some of these businesses weren't going to open again, and I knew that. But what gave him that kind of power, that kind of right? It was never nothing like this has ever happened before. You can go to Walmart to buy something, but you couldn't go to your local business where you've bought that thing. It just made no sense to me. And then he took our kids out of school, stole a year's education from them, even though the science didn't back that, and we still don't know the long-term effects. And I think the final straw for me was putting positive seniors back into the nursing homes when we knew our seniors were the most vulnerable. 50% of our deaths came because of that. Chris, we were watching our freedoms being taken away from us right before our eyes. And I'm 65. I just turned 66. I can't even say 65 anymore. But it's not about me. I'm not worried about me. We were lucky. We were fortunate. We grew up in a great time. But I have 10 grandkids. And when you see government taking this kind of power and what's coming out of Washington and having no firewall here in Pennsylvania, because if Josh Shapiro becomes our governor, there's no firewall. Whatever crazy idea Joe Biden has, people of Pennsylvania will suffer. So I felt I was the best choice. Having statewide name ID, I felt that, if not me, then who? And that's why I'm doing it.
And again, if you have questions for Lou, if you're watching and whatever comes to mind, if you're a Pennsylvanian and you're thinking about the future and you're trying to decide who you'd like to pick as the next governor, please jump on in. And we start right away with Stephen, who says, Lou, how are you going to ensure we have a safe and honest election? As you know, we've talked about this a lot on the show. It's a great starter question. Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court just ruled on Friday, Act 77 unconstitutional. Not terribly likely. I can't imagine that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court sides with that point of view. Certainly, Tom Wolf has been reticent to undo what he signed into law. And as we know, Republicans did pass it into law. Now Democrats love it and Republicans want rid of it. So what of that mess, Lou?
Yeah, well, Act 77, now we know. First of all, we knew it was a terrible law. Now we know it was also unconstitutional. It never should have been passed in the first place. Now we have to try to undo it. And really, the only way we can totally undo Act 77 is to have a Republican governor, where I would repeal Act 77 and get rid of it. It doesn't work. It's ripe for fraud. But in the meantime, how do we get there? How do we get to, to have an election? And, it was a big decision for me, thinking about giving up 2 years of my life to run for this office and then get, you don't want to get cheated. And so, I think what we need to do, and the legislature needs to do everything that they can, to make this election as fair as we can. We should have voter ID. That's ridiculous. If I go to Philadelphia to get a cheeseburger, I have to show a darn vaccine card and an ID, but we don't need to show it to vote. We should have signature matching. If I go to the polls, people see me. They see my face. They know it's me. I sign the book. Why is the bar higher if we go to the poll? So, I think we need the legislature to do whatever it can to make this election safer.
Are you worried about this fall? And I think it was Steve who just asked the question. Are you concerned about election integrity this fall? If you're the nominee and you're up against Josh Shapiro, are you concerned that every vote will count, or that we'll have some funny business with the count in places like Philadelphia this fall?
Well, I got to believe it won't be like it was in 2020, because they can't use COVID unless, all of a sudden, it comes back again to that point. They can't use COVID as an excuse to accept ballots, days later, no envelopes, no signatures. So it can't be to that extent. But, we saw the ballot harvesting. We know dead people vote in Pennsylvania. Now they don't even have to leave the cemetery to vote. They can mail their ballots in. That should be cleaned up. Our voter rolls should be cleaned up. It should be tighter. And I think there's such a wave right now of people who don't like what the Democrats are doing, that moderate Democrats are just going to say, this isn't my party any longer. And I'm hoping that this wave will overcome whatever happens in elections. But we have to bring it back. Yes, I'm concerned.
Jennifer said, and Phil, Lou, bear with me here. I'm going to try to turn off something. My light, I've been told the high beams are bright here. Okay. I'm going to turn this off. Hang on. There, we'll try that. That's probably not too. It's actually the overhead light that's the worst light. Yeah. But anyway, Jennifer wants to know, Lou, how will we ensure the repeal of the mask and vaccine mandates in Pennsylvania schools? Too many, and archdiocesan schools are still insisting on masking based on cases. Parents have had enough. There's literally nothing you can do about your archdiocesan schools. I know that, Lou. Yeah. But what about the rest of the? We've got to put pressure on the school boards.
The parents have to continue doing what they're doing, and they're making an impact. There's no question about it. Parents going to their school boards. As far as myself, I'm totally against any mandates, vaccine mandates, mask mandates. What they're doing to our kids, having masks on them all day long, I think is horrible. And we've got to make sure parents have control again, and we have to be able to back them up, in not only the mask and vaccine mandates, but in the curriculum that, what's being taught to our kids as well. I think if COVID showed us one thing, we saw what was being taught to our kids. So, we've got to give control totally back to the parents. Parents have a right. I signed the 1776 pledge. Again, that make sure that we are teaching our children not to hate each other. We're not going to teach critical race theory. We're We're also going to teach history back to our children again. We've totally eliminated that. They're trying to rewrite history and teach our kids something totally different. So parents have to stay involved and take control again, and make sure that their school boards, listen to them. They are in charge. It's your child.
So do you I know we talked about this. Do you support the idea of, as governor, would you sign a ban, or would you not allow districts to impose vaccine or mask mandates? Would you go as far as banning it as governor, or do you believe that's something that's left to districts?
No, I think it should be left. I believe in the closer the government is to the people, the more control they have, and I get concerned again of governors, again having too much control. Just like I'm complaining about Wolf, having too much control. I think that again that should be closer to the people, and it should be listen. The bottom line is it should be up to the parent, and no school should force somebody to wear a mask, their child to wear a mask. So I think this debate is going to continue to happen. Let's see where it goes by the time I get in, and if it's out of control, then I would step in.
How about this? In Missouri, for instance, where I originally come from, right now the legislature is entertaining, because I don't know if this is true in Pennsylvania or not. I haven't looked into it. You can't recall school board members in Missouri. There's no way a community can recall them. It's a 3-year term, and that's that. The legislature is entertaining the idea of being able to recall your school board member. There's a window of time, not just any time. It's 90 days into their term and 120 days out from the end of their term. That's the window of recall. Also, to maybe put the school board elections with the general election cycle and force candidates to declare party affiliation. I love all that personally. What do you say about that? Something like that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think we should. I mean, what we've seen happen in our schools in the past 2 years, I think we really need to look, who's on our school boards, where they are. Far too many end up because nobody's paying attention, and now we have to pay attention because of what's happening. I love that.
Oswald wants to know, how come Republican candidates in Pennsylvania statewide elections don't reach out to real Black conservatives in our urban areas? This is something that I know in Philadelphia, when we talk to Philadelphia audiences and hear from Black Philadelphians, it is a real lament. They never feel like urban Philadelphia is one Republicans try to reach. What do you say about that?
Well, I think, I've been preaching this to actually, even when Eric Cantor was still in, saying, listen, Republicans don't go where they think they have no chance. And that's because, and then the folks there never get to hear our voice. And I have made an effort to continue to reach out to the Black community in Philadelphia. I've been working with Joe Watkins, who, and some of the Black ministers, again, to make sure and see how I can get in and get my voice heard, and talk to the community, especially when it comes to something I think is very, very important for them, and that's school choice. And that's something that I'm going to offer as an opportunity, because the best thing we can do for anyone in the Black community is make sure that they have a good education. This way, nobody can hold you down. The Democrats can't keep control of you, if you don't have a good education. Once you get an education, and you should be able to go, your tax dollars should follow those students, so that moms and dads can take those kids out of those failing schools and make sure they get a good education or learn a skill as well. I'm looking at some great schools. Central Columbia is a perfect example of something I'd like to do across the Commonwealth, where you pick from 5 career pathways, and the school doesn't even look like a school. And you begin, from the time you're in high school, beginning a pathway of what your career may be. And I want to change the way education is in Pennsylvania, and especially in our Black communities, where I feel the Blacks have been held down by the Democrats. If they care so much about them, why wouldn't they give them a choice of where their kids go to school?
I've often thought, and I don't know because I've never run, so it's fine for me to say this, but I've never actually run a campaign, and I know you get lots of unsolicited advice, but I've always wondered about, particularly in this era we find ourselves with COVID, I always thought we would be able to uniquely, we as conservatives would be able to uniquely message to the Black community now that it was not a conservative or a Republican that wanted to keep your kids out of school for over a year in Philadelphia. It wasn't a conservative or a Republican that wants to keep you out of restaurants if you don't want to take a medicine you don't want to take. It's not a conservative or a Republican that's making your streets more violent and more crime ridden, or that allowed the lawlessness and craziness of 2020 after the George Floyd situation. I always thought to myself there would be an opportunity to message that, but I can't say that I know what that means. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that's money, if that's physically on the ground door knocking, if that's commercials. I don't know, but I always felt like that should resonate. Maybe I'm daydreaming. I don't know.
Well, I think what we've been through in the past 2 years, people are beginning to notice. And I said, so many people, they don't pay attention. They go about their lives, and they're not tuned into. They don't even know who's the senator, who's their congressman. They don't know. They're
right.
When they start paying attention, when they go to the gas pumps, and all of a sudden it's like, what the hell happened? Look at this. Or they go to the grocery store. I went to the pet store to get some. The shelves were empty at the pet stores. That's when people begin to notice. And I believe when that happens, when people they punish the people in office, that's who they blame. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think in all of our communities, people are, this has affected our lives in a way that we've never seen it. And hopefully, people don't have to experience it again, but it's going to change us. It's going to change who we are. And I think it's going to change the political parties. You talk about Act 77. I do believe, as I travel around, people are they're irate that this even happened. I think people are that are involved. The public isn't forgetting who did this to us, and whether it's taking our kids out of school, forcing our kids to have a mask. I think there's a payback to all of it.
If you have a question for Lou Barletta tonight, please submit them, fire away, and we'll throw it up there on the screen like this one from Jennifer. I'm going to turn the lights back on because apparently I made things worse, Lou, while I ask, how will we ensure any illegals flown or driven here by the Biden administration will be returned to the border? Lou, you were the one that called this out. You came on the show, as a matter of fact. You're the one that uncovered the video of these folks being flown in and then bused to various parts of Pennsylvania. We had a state senator who said he favors literally physically sending them to neighboring Delaware, to Biden's country. What can be literally done? If you're Governor Barletta today, could you stop them from coming into Pennsylvania altogether?
I actually had what my proposals would be as governor, and some of it I took off of Governor DeSantis's playbook because he's already dealing with it, and one would be to take away the license of those who are aiding and abetting those that are being illegally flown in to Pennsylvania, like the bus company, for example. The bus companies that are taking them, picking them up at the airports, taking those licenses away, and forcing there to be an agreement with the federal government and the state government before anyone can be relocated in Pennsylvania. And thirdly, not allowing anybody to go into our schools until we have proof, not the federal government, until we have proof that they have all of their vaccines, and that includes polio, hepatitis, mumps, chickenpox, all the vaccines that are required by law for Pennsylvania children. And
Isn't that remarkable? If we could just ruminate on that for a moment.
Yeah.
In an era where we're fighting in the Supreme Court over whether we need to take a brand new shot, Lou Barletta is saying, how about we check on the agreed upon, well understood, well-founded vaccines that we've required of all our school children? How about that be the standard for illegal aliens before we import them into schools? What a crazy place we're in, Lou. We're insisting people get this brand new shot, but we don't care whether they have the basic vaccines that we've all agreed upon for decades.
And they're doing it they're doing it right now, Chris. These kids are being taken, the minors are being taken from the border. We don't know what schools, they are literally showing up at schools. We don't know. And what, we're going to have blind faith because the Biden administration said the vaccines were given? Well, this is what we know. Any of us who have children, you don't get all these shots at one time. It's a series. It takes time. You wait months. So are they trying to tell me that they've given all these shots to everyone at the border, or that they came here with their vaccination cards from Honduras or Guatemala or whatever country they're from? It's ridiculous, and they're putting our kids at risk.
Can you stop it, Lou? I don't. The answer may be no, because the federal government trumps the state on this sort of thing, and maybe there is no physical way a governor could stop it, even if he or she wanted to. Do you know?
Well, I think that there needs to be a lawsuit against. I called for Josh Shapiro to sue the Biden administration, because I believe they are in violation of the Refugee Act, because Joe Biden is relocating these people from the border as if they are refugees, which I don't believe they are. I believe there are people who just illegally crossed the border. I don't think they notified America before they came here and said, they're coming because they're afraid of prosecution. But under the since he's treating them like refugees, under that act, it requires and says that the federal government shall coordinate and consult with the local officials of where they are being relocated and where they are ending up, and with the school officials. They're not doing any of that. They're in violation of that act, and I believe Josh Shapiro should be suing Joe Biden for it, which of course we know won't happen. But until and busing them to Delaware is not out of the question. In fact, I said I went to school, Congress with Ron DeSantis, and Ron, it's a lot closer to bust them from Philadelphia to Delaware than it is Fort Lauderdale to Delaware. But I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. I was the one that exposed them, not only in the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Airport, but then in Allentown, and then later in Harrisburg as well. We don't know how many they've actually brought into Pennsylvania. They're clearing the borders and dumping them into Pennsylvania and other states.
Lou, for people that don't know your background, I got to know you. In fact, I interviewed you before I ever came to Philadelphia. I interviewed you, if memory serves. You became a national story as one of the very first mayors, and our mutual friend Chris Kobach of Kansas represented the community of Hazleton, and you on this issue of illegals in your community long time ago. I mean, we're talking well over a decade ago. Can you talk a little about that?
Sure. It was back actually in 2006 that I finally had enough. Our population, I was elected mayor in 2000. Our population grew by 50%, but our tax revenue stayed the same. So imagine having 50% more people in your community and not a penny more of tax revenue. And I'm thinking, how is this happening? What the heck is going on? And we saw every aspect of our life, especially in a small town, is very transparent. We saw how our hospitals were affected. The wait time, Chris, if you went to the emergency room prior to this, you might wait 15, 20 minutes. Now people were waiting 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, because people who were here illegally were using the emergency room for primary health care because you couldn't be refused. And we saw gangs and a lot of crime that was coming in. And it was through those investigations that we found we had an illegal immigration problem. And I could not find one elected official anywhere to help me. Nowhere. I didn't know what to do. We didn't have the wherewithal. I couldn't hire more police. No elected official wanted to come even near Hazleton. I went down to Department of Justice to Washington in December of 2005. I met with DOJ. I told them about the gang problem. Kids were being recruited in 3rd and 4th grade, MS-13 and others. They were great. They brought in all these experts to talk to me. And then at the end of the day, they gave me this nice coffee mug. They gave me a lapel pin, a pat on the back, and showed me the door. And I remember going home thinking, I'm totally on my own. There's nobody that's going to help me. People in Hazleton, they were so angry. They expected me to do something. So finally, it was May 10th, 2006. I'll never forget, young man named Derek Kishline, 29 years old, father of 3 little children. He had some words with Pedro Cabrera, who was the head of the Latin Kings. Cabrera had been arrested. He was in the country illegally. He had been arrested like 5 times in New York, left go each time, sanctuary city. Cabrera goes in his car, gets out a gun, sticks it between Derek's eyes, and shoots and kills him. We spent half of our yearly budget in overtime in the police department and catching Cabrera and his buddy. And I sat with Mr. and Mrs. Kishline when she said, why is my son gone and this man was still in the country? Why is the father of my grandchildren gone forever and this man is still here? And Chris, at that point, I had enough. I had enough. And we wrote the first law in America in dealing with the problem of illegal immigration as a mayor. And I was sued by illegal aliens who sued the city. And I didn't know where
that went to the Supreme Court.
It went all the way to the Supreme Court. Yeah, they had their identities. They asked their identities to be kept confidential from us, which the judge granted, liberal judge. They then asked if they could be excused from showing up at the trial because they were in the country illegally and they didn't want to go to a federal courthouse out of fear of being deported. They were granted that wish. I never saw our accusers, although I had to take the stand. And I fought that all the way to the Supreme Court. State of Arizona, Chris Kobach writing the law. They passed half of our ordinance and they won in the Supreme Court. Fremont, Nebraska used my entire ordinance and they won in the 8th Circuit. But we lost in the 3rd Circuit and the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. So half of our law is legal in the 9th Circuit. The whole law is legal in the 8th Circuit, but not legal where we created it. And I have been on, that has been my issue from that day on. I was a mayor that wanted to enforce laws and I couldn't go home the same way. I wore a bulletproof vest for a couple days and I slept with a shotgun under my bed. When my dog barked in the middle of the night, my gun came out but I didn't back down because I knew what I was doing was right. And look at 15 years later, the mess that's going on.
And Lou, to be fair and to be clear, that's 2006. That's George W. Bush. I mean, this was a bipartisan problem.
No question. And everyone talked about, well, we need a pathway to citizenship, and then we'll fix the problem. Really? Like how? How does that fix the problem? I've learned so much about this that, how does that fix the problem? And then I go to Congress and I find out the Republicans were just as much the problem as the Democrats because everyone wanted to talk the talk. But when it came time, they really didn't want to do anything. And then remember the Gang of Eight that came forward. First of all, any group that starts with the name gang is probably not a good idea. And it's amazing. And I kept asking the same question. So how do you know the background of somebody that comes from another country? How do you know they are who they say they are? Just like who you calling for a reference, People literally their identities were, it's a mess and it's still happening now. And
Lou, why, may I ask what you believe motivates the Republican Party to be as indifferent or ineffectual about illegal, the problems at the border as the Democrats, why they seem to be one and the same and why, Donald Trump won ostensibly because he talked about building a wall and getting a handle on this. I think most people think that's what mostly catapulted him to victory. I think that's fair to say. Not the only thing. And he seemed to be the only Republican to ever take it seriously. And as such, he was met with all kinds of hell that's still raining down on him today, I believe. Is the Republican Party as culpable in fostering this idea of illegal migration? And if so, to what end? Why? Is it cheap labor?
So first of all, that's why I backed Donald Trump. It was like he was talking to me. I'm like, my God, somebody's finally saying what I'm saying and thinking. So I used to say before I got, when I was trying just a mayor and, looking for help, I used to say, why is this happening? Because you're right, under that administration, the Bush administration was when I was dealing with the problem. And I used to say, I think the Republicans wanted cheap labor and Democrats wanted to vote. And then the more I saw what was happening and I learned, I said, no, I think both parties want the vote. I think it really came down to who thought it was better and not offending people, and they used to say that to me all the time is you're because I would be called anti-immigrant, right? Because that's what happens when you take up this issue immediately, they're going to call you a racist, a bigot, you're anti-immigrant. And I used to say, no, I'm pro-immigrant. I'm fighting for the immigrants who came here legally. This is not fair for them. I had to stop saying illegal immigrant because the media, by the second paragraph, would leave the word illegal out. And my message was like as anti-immigrant. And I would tell them, why would our Latino population in Hazleton have grown every year since I passed the ordinance? Why would you bring your family here if you felt you weren't wanted, if you felt you weren't accepted? You can go anywhere in America. Why would you come to Hazleton? Because what you're saying isn't true. Because they know that what we're doing here is we're welcoming people. We just want people to come here legally. And they get it. They understood it. But, the Republicans thought that if you fight illegal immigration, you're going to turn off the Latino population. And Donald Trump proved that wasn't true.
Right. And in fact, we're seeing an uptick. He saw a great swing in support for from the Latino vote. Donald Trump.
That's right. Oh. Because they get it. They understand. I can't tell you how many Latinos would come up to me and thank me, because they know it's not fair to them. It's not fair that they have to compete for these jobs. It's not fair, that their kids in school aren't getting all the attention that they should and being taught English as their language. They understand that. They understand that it depresses wages. They know how long it took them to come into this country, and the background, the investigations and the medical history and everything that they had to do to prove they are who they are. And it's not fair, and they get it. But it's the politicians who don't really understand it, never really had to deal with the issue like I did. I had to deal with it every day when I got up and went to work. I got it, and I understood it, and I was never afraid. And that's why, I would tell Eric Cantor and the others, we need to go where you think, we don't have support. And we have to explain why our ideas are better. And just to stay away and concede it to the Democrats when they take those votes for granted. They've been taking the black vote for granted for as long as I know. And finally, I really do believe that people in the black community are saying no more. My kid deserves a good education, and they're not really representing us.
Submit your questions for Lou, if you would, please, and we'll read as many of them as we can get through here. Thank you, Lou, for the background. I think it was useful for people that don't know. You've been battling this illegal issue for a long time. Marcos says, in your opinion, this was a fascinating thing, Lou. Friday, Biden comes to Pittsburgh. He's ostensibly there to talk about infrastructure, and a bridge collapses. I think we finally learned that bridge was a state-managed bridge, not a federal bridge. I think I'm right about that. But the Pittsburgh bridge collapse, Marcos wants to know, is that an indication of poor infrastructure oversight? And what would you do differently? Was that so if you're Governor Barletta and a bridge collapses? Incidentally, that morning it was Fetterman out there talking to the press. I didn't even, and I'll be honest, I wasn't paying close attention. Did Wolf show up Friday and even talk about that? That seems like something the governor would be out in front on. But is that the governor's responsibility? Is it the legislature, the Department of Transportation? How do you read that?
Everybody's responsibility. Obviously the buck always stops at the top with the governor. But I was on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in Congress, chaired a subcommittee, and we had there were over 5,000 structurally deficient bridges in Pennsylvania, and we were getting ready to pass a budget, and they wanted to, and again, this was on the Republican side, they wanted to increase truck size and weights. So they wanted to increase the truck size to be a triple trailer, which would be as long as a 747, and increase the weights up to 98,000 pounds. And my family was in the road construction business, and so I had a couple of questions. When those trucks get off the interstate, I know there's like 12 inches of concrete on an interstate, but when they get on a local road, there's only a couple inches of asphalt. And the local taxpayer is responsible for those roads. Do we know that the heavier trucks, will it affect our roads, the cost of repairing our roads, and putting 98,000 pound trucks now on bridges when we have 5,000 structurally deficient bridges, is it safe? And nobody had the answer, but they were going to pass it anyway, because there was a lot of lobbying by the big box stores who obviously wanted the bigger, longer, heavier trucks. And I fought our own party on that issue because, I have 4 daughters. And I said, do you all feel comfortable with your family on a bridge putting heavier trucks on when we actually don't have any facts that could tell us that it's safe to do that? And we were able actually to stop that from happening. And they had to do a study and found out that, yes, it is, was not safe to do that. And I think today we still have over 4,000 structurally deficient bridges in Pennsylvania. They passed the gas tax with
one of the highest, if not the highest in the country, by the way,
yeah,
right?
Right. With the promise that all the money was going to go to fix our roads and bridges. And I'm not so sure all the money's going to fix our roads and bridges now. It's not being diverted somewhere else. And, that's the first thing that needs to be fixed. There was a promise made to the people of Pennsylvania, and that's what needs to be done. We should have an infrastructure bank. We need to fix our roads and bridges. And obviously, this bridge wasn't safe, and we knew it wasn't safe, but the last inspection said it wasn't safe.
It was, it's remarkable that it happened at the time of day it did. That could have been, thank God no one was killed. That was a dramatic looking collapse. Nick says, Lou, when you win, I like that. He's a fan. When you win, how do we get Pennsylvania Republicans to play nice together? Get rid of the PLCB, lower gasoline taxes, etc. We always seem to be our own worst enemy. Yeah, how do you herd the cats of the Republican Party? I'll be honest, as long as I've talked about Pennsylvania Republicans, Lou, I've never quite understood the party. It does seem to struggle and work at cross purposes. There's some Republicans, I'm not sure why they even call themselves Republicans, to be honest. How does Governor Barletta deal with that?
Well, I think just good policy, good leadership. And when you have support of the people, and that's how I've been able to win as a mayor in a city that was 2-1 Democrat. I ended up winning with 90% of the vote on my third term. I beat a 26-year Democrat incumbent in a 2-1 Democrat district, almost 2-1 Democrat district. Beat Bob Casey in 8 of the 10 Northeast counties where the Casey name is like a Kennedy. And people say, how do you do that? You do that by good leadership. The people who know you and see that you're willing to stand up. And, you don't look at it as Democrat or Republican. It's just good policies. And that's what I tell people. We have better policies. Giving you your freedom is like a good idea in America. It's not a plan. It's like you deserve your freedom. You choose if you want to wear a mask. You choose if you want to get a vaccine. But what we can do is lower taxes. Let's be business friendly, and let's bring businesses here and encourage them. I believe in capitalism. It works. There's a risk reward. And the people who decide to take that risk and go into business, they don't want, like somebody who buys a dump truck and a backhoe. They don't want one dump truck and one backhoe. They want a front end loader and they want another piece of equipment, and let them grow. And if we do that, we grow the economy and eventually we get more tax dollars. So I think if you're willing to stand up for what's right, which I always have been from the time I was mayor, it's like I don't wait to see a poll to decide what I believe in. And people don't have to guess what I'm going to do tomorrow. Just look at the things I've done yesterday, and you'll pretty well know that I'm going to be a different type of governor, and hopefully Republicans will follow along.
Katie wants to know, what would you do to attack the drug problem because of the amount of fentanyl that's flooding across the border? Or, I'm sorry, that's from Kathy, not Katie. Sorry, Kathy. Lou, what do you say about the fentanyl issue? By the way, from what I hear, I just heard a stat, an unbelievable stat. It's the number one killer now. Or it's become, I don't know if it's number one. There was a certain demographic. It is far and away the leading cause of death now. It's not COVID.
Yeah, and we know where it's coming from, right? We know it's coming from China, but it's also coming in through the southern border. How about we stop those people that are coming across the border illegally and stop dumping them in Pennsylvania when we know that's how the drug cartel are bringing fentanyl into our communities? So why are we okay with these ghost flights bringing unknown people in the middle of the night into Pennsylvania and somehow think that none of that is tied into the fentanyl that comes into this country and how the cartel gets into our communities? That's the first thing that we need to do. And for somebody who who has a daughter that suffered with addiction, alcohol addiction. It hits very close, and to see the entire family is affected. So it's something that is very, very personal to me, and very proud of my daughter. She just graduated from Temple the other day.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
It's beautiful. It's a dream. It was a dream come true. I actually graduated on my birthday, which was the best birthday present a father could have had. But it's an illness. It's a disease, and we have to treat it that way, and not stigmatize people who suffer. I've been down to Kensington twice, not once but twice, to see what's going on there. And families are being destroyed. I mean, parents walking around with pictures of their sons and daughters, trying to find them. We've got to stop this. We've got to dedicate ourselves to helping those that suffer with addiction and mental health issues as well, because, like I said, nobody wants to be that way. It's a disease.
Lou, if you need to reach, I should say, if you want to reach out to Lou, or if people would like to communicate with you or get in contact, they want to donate, they want to volunteer, they'd like to somehow communicate with your office and ask you further questions, I guess the best way, we just threw up your website, loubarletta.com. I just ask you in closing, Lou, what would you like to say to folks who are considering this menu of Republicans as they're trying to pick their favorite Republican to go on up against Josh Shapiro? What would you say in your closing
I'd like to say that I believe I'm the only one running on the Republican side who actually has experience governing. I've been a mayor for 11 years. I've been a businessman. I've been a mayor. I've actually governed. I have a record. I was named Pennsylvania Mayor of the Year, so I'm very proud of the record and the work that I did. I had 8 years in Congress legislating as well. So, I've run statewide. I understand campaigns. I think I check every box needed for a Republican to beat Josh Shapiro. And that's the most important thing, that at the end of the day, everyone checks one box, but I believe, my experience in governing, being in Congress, running statewide, having statewide name ID is an advantage that we'll have running against Josh Shapiro. I have a record of beating Democrats, which also is important. I've been vetted. I've had my background checked running in high-profile races. There are no bones left in my closet, yet alone a skeleton. So I think I'm ready. I'm road-tested and ready on day one.
And most importantly, what kind of dog do you have? Did you say you have a couple of dogs?
I have one dog. I have an English cream golden retriever.
Oh.
He's all white, and he came to Congress. He came to work with me every day when I was in Congress. He won the cutest dog on a hill.
Is he there now?
He is. He's by the front door now, looking out.
Keeping guard.
It wasn't on his behavior. He won it because he was a cute looking dog, but he wasn't handsome. I don't want to say cute. That's embarrassing for him. He's a big dog. He's 90 pounds. And we have 2 cats, a brother and sister that we got from the rescue, and he's scared to death of them. He's scared to death of them.
He's scared of the cats. All right. Well, I'm not much of a cat man myself, so I can't blame him. Lou, you've been a great friend and resource to the show for a long time. We appreciate your availability and taking the questions of an evening. I know it's a grueling thing to do a campaign.
It was like a fireside chat, and I love it with the question. It's a really good format.
Well, stay in touch. You're always welcome to the show, and good luck to you as you continue on your campaign, Lou Barletta.
Thanks, Chris.
And we will see you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. on Philadelphia's AM 990 The Answer. Thanks for being here. Good night.